Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic. It is time to talk about how the newly simplified Melty performed at ARC's February meet for the beetle weight category. So as mentioned, this was a simplified design. We literally sat down and removed the spinning weapons from it and just put on solid steel teeth for this particular event, just to get the melting working at the very least and see how all of that stuff was actually going. Now, as mentioned at the start of this video, or as was on the screen at the start of this video, the pits are open for this entire event. Again, if you are not into watching pits or fights with pits in them, just skip this video and move on, because there are pits in this video. That's how this is going to work. Anyway, moving on to actual fights, we're going up against Sordid History first, a YOLO drive thwack bot. Uh-oh.
That's going to be a count. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ah, that's annoying. So this is something I thought that I was going to have fixed with the new PCB that we put into TBH squared here, because that is what I called this for the tournament itself, because it's not quite TBH, so it's technically number 2, but anyway, doesn't matter. Naming conventions aside, in the original version of the Melty, I was having this like power brownout, like reset issue, and I thought it was to do with the actual onboard regulator that I had put on the actual Melty PCB. And when I replaced that onboard regulator, or bypassed it and plugged a BEC into the brain board and ran that in my wiring loom, it worked, and I didn't have that power reset issue anymore. So the newest boards, the ones that are in here, use that same power regulator on the actual board of the Melty, like hard soldered down into it, and I assumed that that was going to keep that issue from cropping up again. Unfortunately not, and I now think that in actual fact what was happening was the reset button on the Melty itself was being pushed. There's a little reset button on the Teensy 3.2, and I think that in big hits that's being pushed, and it's being pushed in a weird way or something, and the Teensy isn't resetting properly, which is causing this kind of failure mode, because there was still power through the robot. You could see the lights on inside it, which were the ESCs still sitting there with power waiting to receive signal from the brain, but the brain had died, turned off, something. So, being that this was at an event when this happened, I did the only thing I really thought I could, which was to just jam some cardboard in there. I made a little like arch of cardboard, jammed it over the top so that the button couldn't be pressed, and reloaded everything for the very next fight. Speaking of, this is a robot called Choppy. It is a scoopy wedge made out of cutting boards.
Like a hockey puck.
A hard to control hockey puck.
Sounds cool.
Translocates it. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's the motor's stopping and starting at like very, very high speeds.
Yeah, it's really cool. Why don't you try and move more aggressively? One minute left.
Hell yeah! Now that was meltying. Yes, we didn't win that fight, but oh my god, things worked well in that fight. So, a couple of things to note here. Going into this fight, I had turned up the rotation speed because I was like, well, I don't know that this cardboard is going to do the job at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the spin speed up, and if I've only got one shot, I'm going to glass cannon it. I'm going to put as much energy into that shot as I possibly can. Well, not quite as much as I possibly can. I still left myself a little bit of headroom so that the Melty could actually melty, but that did mean that for the first little part of this fight, the heading was drifting significantly, and I was trying to, on the fly, in a fight, tune that on the radio, which is a thing I can do, but it's not ideal to be doing that in the middle of a fight. That is also why most of this fight through, I wasn't driving in a line at people or at Choppy. I was literally like tweaking and just like pushing a little bit on throttle to get the robot to move so that it would just like zoop around, because again, the heading wasn't correct. And also I know that when I'm driving in a direction at the moment, the heading kind of hovers or wobbles a little bit, which means that driving in a straight line is kind of hard to do, and driving longer distances in particular is hard to do. This is stuff that I can tweak and change and code out of the system, but it's about getting there. It's getting to that point, and this is kind of our first real good melting attempt, so we've got more space to move on from here. Now that we've got a melting device, we can work on changing and tweaking and simplifying the code so that, or improving the code, I should say, so that it works properly even when melting. But having said that, let's keep talking about this fight because this was great fun. We got a lot of really big shots in here. Unfortunately, I don't really have any damage photos to show you because most of the people we actually fight today are running old chassis, so there's no new armor paneling on people that I can be like, yes, this here specifically was damage from this fight. Everybody kind of has damage from loads of previous fights, which is a little bit unfortunate. It does make it very hard to determine exactly what kind of damage output we were getting out of the Melty, but there were some really big shots in there and like throwing everybody around the arena. There was also a pit escape, which was incredible. I mean, I knew that that was possible. Spin Smash, a robot we'll talk about a little bit later on, and I think we've talked about on this channel before, has been escaping the pits for a couple of events now, simply by spinning really, really fast. And if you do that and land on the pit, you kind of like throw yourself back out, which is what we saw in this fight, which is really, really cool. Unfortunately though, at the very end, even though the robot did not have a reset power failure, an incomplete bounce, or yeah, not a great bounce at the end there, got us to be over by the pit, bouncing into the pit, and not spinning at a high enough speed, or not spinning at all, so definitely not spinning at a high enough speed to bounce ourselves back out again. It is unfortunate, but that is what is going to happen sometimes when you're running a high power weapon with open pits around. You're just, you know, at a risk of throwing yourself into the pit. So that, but again, this was a great fight. I'm so glad that nothing went wrong in this fight. Well, nothing technically in the robot went wrong in this fight. It was just good. I was very, very happy with that. 2 fights into the day, and I was like, I could be done now. I could be finished with this event and I would be very happy with what we have achieved today. But we were not done with this event yet. So moving on, we have a fight against Lumberjack, which is a fairly nasty vertical spinner.
2, 1, go!
No, not again! And the reset bug is back again. When I opened the robot up after this event, the cardboard that I had put down had shifted a little bit, so I think this is the thing that's kind of confirming for me that it is this reset button on the Teensy 3.2. I have a couple of ideas about how to fix that. There is a couple of things that I could be doing to kind of mitigate this issue. One of them is just removing that button entirely, and the other one is never having it there in the first place. Something we'll talk about much, much later when we get to a new version and go back to putting weapons on this thing and, you know, having a bit of fun with things again. Not that this isn't fun, but yes, having the weapons on the Melty I think is more fun than the Melty, or at least will be when all of that stuff works together and works well. Back to this fight though, we got a big hit in early, which was great. I love a good big hit, and it did prove that the Melty can take hits, which honestly is fairly incredible considering that these weapons at the front here are literally held on by like 12 mil of HDPE. It's just 6 mil top and bottom, that is it. And it still somehow manages to survive being hit by Lumberjack and hitting Lumberjack and throwing everybody everywhere. There was, of course, another really good pit escape in this one, and he got stuck up on his back, and if I'd thought about it for even half a second, I should have probably just left him there, but I was like, ooh, I can hit him right now. Unfortunately, the hit that I got on him was a glancing blow and was not, in fact, a nice big belly shot, which was kind of what I was hoping for. And then yes, with him down like that or back on his wheels again, even though he was upside down, he still is pretty maneuverable like that. Verts with bunny ears often do tend to keep their maneuverability when upside down. And then yes, he invited another shot to try and flip himself back over, got himself back over, and then yeah, we powered down again, which is a shame. But it, like I said, it kind of confirms to me that this is what the issue is. It is that reset button. So going into the final fight up against Spin Smash, told you we'd talk about that robot again, I taped down the cover that I'd put over the reset button in hopes of fixing this particular issue. Now we're going up against Spin Smash, as mentioned. Spin Smash, as I think I've talked about on this channel before, is a Melty brain without the brain.
Here we go. Well, that was a move.
Oh, jeez. A lot of energy going on here.
Take each other.
Getting over that lip's going to be tricky. Spin down, get over the lips.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the fight to him.
Oh, you're spinning in a bad direction.
You all good, Nate? Yeah, he's dead. Oh, he's dead. All right. I will stop then. You want me to hit him? I don't.
You're going to go right in the piss.
I gone the wrong way.
So again now. We've already called him. Oh, here we go.
Wait up.
By the way.
All right then.
That
Live filming.
I mean,
No, that way. All right, that's enough.
You see what I mean about a Melty brain without the brain? Spin Smash is effectively a horizontal thwackbot where Nate, its driver, literally just spins it up to full speed and invites you to go and hit him with that configuration, which is an interesting strategy, sure. It does mean that he pit escapes, much like I did and have done a couple of times now, especially again in this fight. And it was interesting because those were some very, very high power impacts because both robots were spinning at high speeds. He has like small hammers on the ends of chain. They hit exceptionally hard if you let them. And of course I was letting them. I was inviting weapon to weapon contact. And again, the robot survived pretty well. So the construction materials and methodology here actually works out pretty well. So I'm fairly happy with how all of that stuff went. Then of course he had an electrical gremlin, which was nice that it wasn't me for once, and he powered down or something along those lines. There was still a little bit of twitch movement out of him at the end there, but it did seem like something had gone wrong. Maybe he had like a brownout or a battery fail or something. I'm not really all that sure. I had stopped the melting to get across the seam and get back over to him, spun back up, and they're like, nah, he's dead. And then Steve and Nate invited me to go for another hit, so I tried. And unfortunately, the drivability of the Melty, as mentioned, with the melting not fully tuned, is kind of difficult. And you got to see that on full display at the end of that fight. I tried to hit him, went the wrong way, and then that kind of pushed me into this place where I just was not driving purely all that well. There was a nice one where I did actually manage to get up through the center of the arena, but then of course, because the robot was facing towards me, I pushed the stick the wrong way. I pushed the stick the way that I thought it needed to go, but I was incorrect because it was facing me and not facing away from me. So I pushed to my right and the robot went to its right, which is exactly what it was supposed to do. But I was actually meaning I wanted to push to my right to have the robot go to its left, which that is a user error, fairly obviously. And then of course, we just did not manage to get back over to him. Driving it while untuned is a little bit difficult. I think I know how to fix that. I think I know what the code needs to do. I also do actually think it might be time to put an accelerometer in this bad boy. I think we are at about the limit of what we can do with Dead Reckoning based on wheel speed, mostly because I think the issue that we had here is that as we try and drive, the heading drifts significantly, and I think that's because the wheels speeding up and slowing down aren't accounted for properly in code, which means that the Melty is spinning faster or slower than it thinks it is at any given point, which causes the heading to drift quite significantly and makes it harder to just hammer a direction and move in that direction. So definitely something that I want to work on and fix going forwards. We just might need a place to practice, which we'll get there. There is something very big coming up. If you've been on my Instagram in the last couple of weeks, you have seen some teasers for a thing that is going to happen very, very soon. And if you're not on my Instagram, there is a link in the description of this video. Go ahead and check that out. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. A pretty good showing from the Melty overall. Definitely a stepping stone in the right direction to where we want to be with Melty tech. And I am keen to see this grow and improve. And now that we have a platform that we can do that with, we are definitely going to grow and improve. Anyway, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.